It was Isa, Yesu, Jesus, Allah. In Eastern terminology, um, this is referring to Eastern mysticism, they're referred to as Namarupa. Namarupa means name form, right? So name form divides, fragments us, but the ultimate reality has no name or form. So once you look at it from that standpoint, then whether you sing about Allah or sing about Kanna or sing about Isha or sing about anybody, you're basically referring to the one source that transcends the mind and is something that unites us all. We all come from that one source. We go back to that one source. So my presentation, my understanding is that if we dissolve that mind-based interpretation of religion and reality, then we are all in that same source. And then there's no fragmentation and there's a sense of oneness. Once you're one within yourself, then you become one with everybody around you. And then once you're one with everybody around you, then you start developing a sense what they refer to as cosmic oneness, you know. And so that is a paradigm shift. So it might sound like blasphemy to many people, but it's not blasphemy. This is the teaching, ultimate teaching of all religions, basically, is to find the source within you, within yourself. So as a preamble, I want to lay out clearly what I'm trying to accomplish today, that we are essentially missing.
Interrupt. Will you let me know when to move on to the next slide?
Yes, yes. Actually, will you go to the earlier slide? I think the first slide was different, Vani. Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't come to that slide yet, but this is just an introduction. So there are a lot of primal ignorances we have. Primal ignorance meaning that we haven't spent time to understand our inner workings. We've spent a lot of time understanding how the world works. We've gone to the moon, we've gone to Mars, we've discovered a cure for cancer, we've learned to make automobiles and airplanes, but basically we haven't done one simple thing. We haven't looked inwards to find out who we are or what we are. And that has been the path of all the Eastern mystics and the Occidental mystics, whether it was Jesus or whether the beautiful statements of Sufi Islam or Buddhism, of course, predated a lot of these things. All of it was a search for self-understanding, and we'll talk about that in a minute. That's one, that we see ourselves as separate, fragmented individuals because we define ourselves through the little peephole of the mind. Ada vittu number and the worldly kannal valiya paakama, we look at ourselves through the spiritual eye, then we see only oneness. We see through the worldly eye, the external eye, then we see only fragmentation, forms and shapes. And at the quantum level, if you see, we're all just bouncing electrons, energy electrons. So at the quantum level, we are all the same. Only the name and form that we take takes on a different shape and form. And we see with the external eye, we are going to see only the forms and shapes, not the substance from which it arises. So the metaphor use pannona, as a metaphor, if you look at the waves, I wrote a poem that my sister once, like 20 years ago, I sent the poem to her. She wanted to publish it. She writes a lot of books. And in that poem, the wave, each wave is arguing with the other wave saying, I'm mightier than you, and they're fighting with each other. And a seagull flies over the waves and looks down at the waves and says, hey, wait a minute. Don't you all realize you're only salt and water finally, all of you. All of you are just salt and water. So that is the principle of my presentation. That's the primal ignorance that needs to be broken. The second one is one of the mistakes all religions made, I feel, across the board, is not address one very fundamental phenomenon that Buddha addressed as a master teacher. So Buddha would not accept a disciple unless they accepted impermanence. Anicca is the term used in Buddhism. A very easy to understand Indo-European term. A means the opposite, A illa, right? So nothing but God is Allah. Same principle. A means, in all languages, A means the opposite. And Nicca means nityam, certainty. So the acceptance of uncertainty, the acceptance of impermanence, the acceptance that we live finite lives is often forgotten. And that's a second ignorance we live in. We live in that illusory world goes on. All of a sudden, something happens, a diagnosis is made, and shock descends upon us and our mind goes into a spiral. So the constant meditation of impermanence is a fascinating, beautiful spiritual awakening that happens if you wake up in the morning and say, I am well. My mother used to tell me her grandmother used to, live with them. And that's my great grandmother. And எங்க அம்மா போய் வந்து பாட்டி கேட்பாலாம், நாளைக்கு காலம்புற நான் ஒரு 11 மணிக்கு வரேன், கோவில் போலாமா அப்படின்னு கேட்பாலாம். அப்போ பாட்டி சொல்லுவாங்களாம், the grandmother would tell her, நாளைக்கு பொழைச்சு கண்டா பார்த்துக்காண்டி. That is, if I'm alive tomorrow, we'll see. And that was that phenomenon that happens as one gets older and wiser. The approach to impermanence becomes a reality, not a phenomenon or a concept or a thought in the mind. It becomes a positive reality. That is, we have a short time on this planet Earth, and that makes every moment precious. And we'll talk about this beautiful statement of Buddha in just a minute. That's the second ignorance. So summarize, first ignorance is we are separate individuals. Second ignorance is that we are going to go on and on. We know that death is far away in a distance, rather than assuming that death is imminent, not in the sense of a negative nihilistic feeling, but awareness of the beautiful shortness of the time we have on this planet that makes every kshanam. Kshanam is the word in Sanskrit. Kshanam means 1/65th of a second. And we live in many kshanams, is what the Eastern mystics said. So those nanoseconds make up a second, 60 seconds make up a minute, 60 minutes make up an hour, and 24 hours make up a day, and 365 days, and so on. And quickly time goes by, and as you and me know, we've seen 60, 61, 62 years go by in a flash. And you and me were sitting in a medical school, Marathakadila ukandru, coffee kudichinde, pesindo. All of a sudden, we are on the other side of life, looking back at the life we have lived. How soon that has passed. 40 years gone by in just a flash. So that is it. And so that is the beautiful thing I want to state. And Buddha says it beautifully in what's called the Diamond Sutra, very famous, beautiful sutra, very short sutra. He says, so you should view this fleeting world, my friends, as a star vanishing at dawn, as a bubble in a stream, as a lightning flash outlining a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, a dream. So acceptance of impermanence is a beautiful sense of tranquility. Then you come to acceptance of life and death in the process. So it's a very important spiritual awakening that I want to raise. And then the third point I want to raise is there are 3 types of existences or life. One type is just living for the day and just waking up, going to work, not really aware of the world around you, of ourselves, and just working, and one day retiring and one day dropping dead. So that's one process of living. There's no harm in doing that if that's what one has chosen in this lifetime. The second one is what's called a stream enterer. The stream enterer looks around the world puzzled. He asks, why are children suffering? Why are women in famine? And why are women being raped? Why is there tsunamis? And why is there, as Jaya mentioned, she talked about tsunamis jokingly, but tsunamis, I was in 2004 in Chennai when the tsunami hit, I'd taken a year off sabbatical and we were trying to relocate to Chennai. And I remember the tremendous force, the tsunami. And we didn't know if it was an earthquake from Sumatra or whether it was actually the ocean rising. So what are all these? What are all these phenomena? If God is that great and that beautiful, why doesn't he protect us? And secondly, why does he harm children and women who are harmless? How come the tsunami, when it hits, only the poor people are affected? All the farmers were hit. The rich people were doing well. And if the poor were to be supported by God, as all religions say, then why? The questions arise in the mind. Such a questioner becomes a stream enterer. Then he understands who really is God or what is God? What am I? So that questioning, you enter the stream, and the hope is the force of the stream will take you to the very source of all existence itself. And so then the third form of existence is enlightenment, an enlightenment of a Buddha, Ramana Maharshi, or Jesus, where enlightenment means that you've transcended from the mind-body concoction of reality. So the mind and body is only a concept of reality. So it is not reality itself. And so instead of finding out what reality is, you find out who it is that's thinking of what is reality. Who's the source of this question? Who's the questioner, right? And Ramana says, when you ask who is the questioner, the goal is not to find the questioner. The goal is to efface the questioner himself as an entity, as an individual, independent entity. And we'll come to that. I'm going to take you through an intellectual, professorial, I would put it that way, professorial path to understanding. I'll give you an intellectual framework on which those who are interested can pursue a deeper self-understanding. And then, as the Upanishad said beautifully, it says, what is that by knowing which everything else is known? So what is that by knowing which everything else is known? And that is what we'll try to reach. Once you know that, then I can understand Mallika's Christianity. I can understand Kaniz's Islam. I can understand Ganapati's Shaivism, for example. I'm just assuming. I'm just using metaphorical terms. And I can understand the atheist non-belief. I can understand the theist belief, because both theism and atheism arise from the mind. When you transcend mind, there's neither theism nor atheism, there's only reality. So on the point I want to make. So with that, I want to go to this initial slide, almost as an invocation slide. Back to that first slide, sorry, Bonnie. I'll read that very quickly. So James Thurber was a comedian, American comedian who lived in the 40s and 50s. And this is a beautiful statement he made before he died. Let us not look back in anger or forward in fear, but around in awareness. And why that is important is the mind is never able to sit in the present moment. We're not able to. And even worse now in the 21st century with all the internet and the social media, a mind is more and more fragmented. We are distracted. And the distraction, if you understand the general adaptation syndrome, that we've heard as lectures in medical school, the gas syndrome and the stress and the cortisol and adrenaline, this kind of fragmentation is toxic to us. It kills us. It produces atherogenesis. I did 20 years, I worked on atherogenesis and plaque rupture. That was my area of research. I was funded by NHLB and NIH. And we looked at mast cell proteases, and this process is a chronic, indolent process, this kind of fragmentation. Oneness is a healing process. So I hope to get to that, where we're not darting back, not darting forward, but staying firmly in contact with the present moment. And what is the present moment? The Parkland. We'll look at that in just a few minutes. So this is a beautiful statement from Buddhism. And Buddhism, as you know, predated Christianity and predated Islam. And of course, the Upanishads and the Vedic period predated Buddhism. Buddha came out of the Upanishads in that culture. So the Blessed One said, do not pursue the past. Do not lose yourself in the future. The past is no longer existence. The future is yet to come. Both the past and the future are fictions of imagination. They are imaginary ideas in your mind. One is a dream that goes back and pulls on memory. This is a bad thing. This is not right. And looking forward, what will happen tomorrow? What if the tsunami, the pandemic doesn't end? So instead of that, staying firmly in contact with the present takes practice. And that is the practitioner. The one who practices living in the present is the practitioner, dwells in stability and freedom. And why? Because he's hit the right note. He's hit the high note. As we said about Kaniz hitting the note, you hit that sur, that shadjam or the sa. Sa, pa, sa, pa, sa. That is the basic, the rhythm of the tambur. And that's the basic rhythm of our life: birth, death, and life. And birth, death, and life. That's the trinity of our existence. Sa, pa, sa. Sa is the birth, pa is our existence, and sa is the ultimate dissolution. That is also A-U-M in Eastern Hinduism. A is the arising, U is the upkeep, and M is the material dissolution. And so what happens after you say A-U-M? Om. Where does it end? Where did that Om begin with, and where does it end? So we come from that silence, out of that noise arises. Noise is a metaphor for existence, birth, life, and death, A-U-M, which in Eastern wisdom, in Hinduism, is Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, right? The Trinity, the Holy Spirit, very similar Trinity in Christianity. And that rising and falling is the movement of life and the movement of the mind. If we stop all that and live in the present moment, then there is neither birth nor death, okay? Conceptually, there's neither birth nor death. And there's a beautiful story of Ramana when he was dying, thousands thronged to his ashram. And one person ran up to him. He was sitting on a little stool. Kala purchina kadarena, that's the term. He cried, he wept. Are you leaving us and going? And Ramana looked at him with the gaze of absolute mercy and compassion. He said, where can I go? I'm here right now. So that absolute presence is cited. I used to do talks on death and dying, Eastern concepts of death and dying, the Dean's Lecture Series in my medical school. And that's when I found the story that a Jewish mystic had written in his 3 Pillars of Zen. He had written this story, beautiful story. So we must be diligent today, going on to this statement, we must be diligent today. To wait till tomorrow is too late. That comes unexpectedly. So there is an urgency in self-understanding. Self-understanding is not something to be postponed to tomorrow because it might be too late. How can we bargain with death and his mighty hordes? The sage calls a person who dwells in mindfulness night and day, the one who knows the better way to live alone. Live alone meaning live with yourself. Ability to live with yourself and comfort with yourself is a sense of absolute oneness, unfragmented oneness. So next slide, Vani. So I'm going to start with just, after this, I'll go through a few of these slides very quickly, and then we'll go to the master slide at the end, which is a...
Can I just stop sharing? I just want to be sure that I'm recording. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Yeah, perfect. I got it. Okay,
Yes.
we're on.
So now this is a beautiful statement. I go back to Ramana because after 20 years, I started with Jiddu Krishnamurti. I read a lot of Buddhism, went deep into Buddhism, which was beautiful. I read Sufi Islam and the teachings of Rumi and Kabir. And then I transferred.
Okay.
I then transferred to, I found Ramana about 20 years ago. And
What's the name?
Please, can you all mute? I'm trying.
Ohan has to mute.
Okay. Okay, so, and Ramana makes this beautiful statement. I think this is very, very fundamental statement. If you understand this, then everything becomes obvious. Silence is ever speaking is the perennial flow of language. It is interrupted by speaking, for words destroy this mute language. Silence is unceasing eloquence. It is the best language. It is a state when words cease and silence prevails. And that is the ultimate state. And what is that silence? A silence is the state of stillness of the ocean. Remember, I talked to you about the metaphor of the waves. So waves make noise. They crash on the rocks and they make noise. Whereas the deep stillness of the ocean depths has no noise. And once you go deep within yourself, the goal is to find that area of stillness, unfragmented stillness, that produces the ultimate healing. And you can give it any name you want. You can call it Allah, you can call it, this is what was self-subsisting eternal source was the Anu's poem. That was the meaning that was read of Anu's poem, Ah-Illah, nothing but Allah, the self-subsisting eternal source. And the same with Hinduism too. And we'll talk about all the religions that way. Now, that is a disclaimer because I'm actually breaking the silence by talking. So it's my ego source that's talking now, unfortunately. So first disclaimer, I apologize for talking because I'm trying to communicate a deeper essence that basically should not be communicated. It has to be self-understood. I cannot walk in your shoes. You have to walk in your own shoes. But all I'm doing is pointing to the wisdom that exists in this world so that one moves from this external world to a world that's internal and tap into that silent source of energy, okay? The second one is he who knows does not speak, who he speaks does not know. So because I'm speaking, then by definition, I don't know. So I'm going to profess, I'm only going to point the way, but I don't know the actual source. And I'm hoping that by pointing the way, if you remember the movie Enter the Dragon, V.C. Namurga, the beautiful movie, I would have seen it like 30 times. And everybody who came out of Enter the Dragon would be kicking all those trash cans, doing, everybody was in a karate mood in those days. And the Britisher comes to recruit Bruce Lee to enter Hans Island, to fight a battle where no guns are allowed. And they found that Bruce Lee was a man who could, was a one-man army. So I'm going to Kegram. When the Bruce Lee says, why don't you come with me? Let's have tea in the garden. Garden Love, and they're sitting, I don't know if you guys remember the scene, a student shows up and Bruce Lee excuses himself and he says, pardon me, sir, I have a class to take. He goes up to the student and the student looks at him and Bruce Lee basically points out to the heavens with his finger. And the boy looks at the finger and Bruce Lee hits him on the head and says, don't look at the finger or you'll miss all the heavenly glory beyond. So religion was meant only as a metaphor, as a pointing finger. We took religion as the end all, as opposed to it being a metaphor as a pointing finger. As a result, we started fighting over fingers, your finger, my finger, as opposed to looking at where these fingers pointed to one single source. And that source does not speak. Words transcend that source, thought transcends that source, and mind transcends that source. So we'll slowly get to that point as the molecular pathogenesis lecture continues. And so I want to talk very briefly in this lecture about duality versus non-two. So non-dual means non-two, but it's not the opposite of duality. The one as opposite of duality has no opposite. So we'll talk about that. It's a beautiful understanding. Then there's a verbal intellectual understanding. So I use this metaphor very quickly to describe this. A reporter has been flown to Pompeii. And the story is Pompeii has had a huge volcanic eruption and lava is pouring and enveloping a whole village. So he's on top of another mountain and he's on a hotel room on the balcony looking down on Pompeii, where the lava is flowing and entrapping all these people who are crying in agony and getting burnt, children, women, families, animals. So he's writing this story, okay? And he's sending it to the rest of the world, to Reuters and through New York Times and other news media, CNN, they're all publishing his story. So there are three levels of understanding, right? The person who's actually in the lava is actually experiencing it. The person observing it is observing it, but he's not in the lava. He experiences empathy. He says, oh my God, look at that. But he's not experiencing it. When Lakshmi's husband passed away, we all grieved. But our grief is nowhere near the grief of Lakshmi, who had lost her husband, right? It's an absolute reality for her. For us, it was a conceptual reality. And then you come to the guy who's reading it, somewhere in India, in Delhi or Chennai, sitting in a newspaper, hey, the party Pompeii, though volcanic eruption, so his is a third level. He's not even observing the scene. He's completely isolated from that scene. So what I'm telling you is we have to go from the guy from Chennai. We had to go to the guy on the mountaintop who's actually watching this and writing to Reuters, and then actually go to immersing yourself in the lava itself. You immerse yourself in absolute being, in essence of existence. That's what we're going to. Now, that is the difference between empathy and compassion. The third point on that bottom square. Empathy is the guy sitting in the balcony looking down. He felt empathy for the people, but he didn't feel compassion. Compassion is the next level. Compassion is the guy who sees a poor man and doesn't say, traffic that is one, is empathy. Compassion is actually stopping the car in the middle of traffic, running out and getting the guy some food, right? So acting on empathy is compassion, all right? And then existence, enlightened existence, was enlightenment, is these three states we talked about. Next slide. You can just put forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So just about the living wisely in a chaotic world, about that, we are all doing time. So it was a book written by a beautiful person who was an American who did the prison ministry. He taught them about peace and, and resolution of the conflict. There were conflicted people in the prisons. He wrote the book, We Are All Doing Time. And actually, you and me, we're all doing time because we're in the prison of the mind. We're trapped by the mind, right? How to free ourselves from that prison of the mind is the question. So I'm going to point to an escape hatch in lecture 2 for those who are interested in attending the second part of the series. First, I'm going to present only the problem as it exists. And as Krishnamurti says, when you understand the problem, the solution becomes self-evident. If you don't understand the problem, you search for a solution. When you understand the problem is you, the solution lies within yourself. So let's go to the next slide. So the first misunderstanding is life was meant for living and fun, not for quiet introspection and solitude. Actually, it's a misunderstanding, and we have to do both. You have to live in this world, and yet we have to practice introspection. And I use the example of the lotus. We'll see that in a little bit. The lotus grows out of the mud. So mud is samsara. Lotus is enlightenment, self-understanding. If there were no samsara, if there was no suffering, there's no need for self-understanding or enlightenment. So the mud, the samsara, the world of suffering that Jesus spoke about, that Muhammad spoke about, that Eastern mystics spoke about, that is essential substrate out of which the stalk of existence arises. And from the stalk, a beautiful flower will flourish. So there is mud and there is beauty. And in between, there is the connecting link, which is our own self-understanding. Next slide. I'm going a little fast through the other slides so we can get to the last culminating slide. So what is meditation and what is self-understanding? We'll talk about this process as we go through this lecture. What is the self and what is to be understood about the self? Nan yar. Abdina, what is nan? What is yar? Who's asking the question and who's a self that needs to be understood? Who's a subject and who's the object? Beautiful little dissection we'll do as we go through this process. Next slide. Misunderstanding number 2. Socrates said, know thyself, and he was put to death, right? He was asked to drink hemlock. He was asked to drink poison. Same thing happened with Jesus. He was crucified. All these mystics and these people who understood self were antithetical to religion. So the religious people did not like it. So that was a problem. So misunderstanding number 2 is religion was all about worship and glorification of a deity for personal gain, for personal salvation, or getting the best car, getting the next job, or getting a cure for a personal disease, but not about self-understanding or individual responsibility. So that's my critique about religion in general, is religion has always been utilized for personal gain, but not as looking at understanding that we are the rest of mankind. We're the rest of existence. And from there comes a source of compassion for even from the ant to the caterpillar. That's why I have a great feeling for Jainism. I think Jainism was an amazing religion. Mahavira was was a contemporary of the Buddha in those days. Next slide. So here's a beautiful statement from Rumi. This universe is not outside of you. Looking inside, everything that you want, you already are. And so Jiddu Krishnamurti also said that. He said, instead of reading the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, or the Dhammapada or the Buddha, why don't you read the book of yourself, he said. That's the ultimate book to be read. If you understand yourself, you understood all religion. You understand God himself or herself. And the New King James Version says, nor will they say, see here or see there, for indeed the kingdom of God is within you. So this is basic Christianity. Or Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, I'm seated at the heart of all living beings, not behind a cloud somewhere in heaven outside, but right within us. The ultimate reality is seated. So scriptures and parables and truths are to understand and to get insight from, truths to live by, not just to chant and repeat. So what is that's being referred to? Who are we finally? What is you and what is I? So Buddha used the parable of the raft. And in that he says, he asks his students, okay, you go up, and you're walking in the jungle and there's a huge raging river. And what do you do? So every student comes with a solution. One student says, I'll wait till the river stops the flood. Another student says, I'll learn to just accept the bank. And everything was a beautiful statement. I'll live on this side. I don't have to cross, that too is a desire and so on. Until one student said, sir, I will build a raft. I'll cut down some bamboo. I'll tie it together and make a raft. The Buddha said, that's a beautiful answer. And what would you do with the raft, son? And the student said, I'll get on the raft, sir, and get to the other side. And the Buddha said, then what do you do with the raft after you get onto the other side, son? And the student said, I will leave it on the bank, sir, for somebody else to use it who needed to travel back. And the Buddha says, that is what you do with scripture. That is what you do with religion. Religion is a raft to take you across, but you don't carry the raft on your head. If you carry the raft on your head and walk on the banks, then you're misunderstanding the whole idea of religion. Religion was a pointing finger. It was not the end all. And so the raft, as a metaphor for religion, takes you across to the other bank, the other shore. What is the other shore? From the world of samsara, from the mud of samsara, of suffering, life, dirt, disease, sickness, we arise and we take the raft of the stock, which is our life. Our existence is a raft with scripture and religion to blossom into a beautiful lotus flower. And what is that blossom? The other shore. And what is that other shore? That lies right within you. The universe is not outside of you. Look inside. Rumi says, everything that you want, you already are. And Jesus says, the kingdom of God is within you. And Bhagavad Gita says, Arjuna, I'm seated right within your heart. Asaya sthitaha, he says in Sanskrit. Within your own heart of all beings, I'm seated right within. So next slide. So this is Ram Dass, who was very influenced by Eastern mysticism. And look into every religious, spiritual, and wisdom tradition, and we find the same precept. Life's ultimate truth, its ultimate treasure lies within us. Now, what is within us? We'll see in a minute. I'll put it out as Sarat Chandra would. I remember a beautiful lecture by Sarat Chandra. I think we all remember the lecture when he talked about the spine. And he went and actually drew an automobile. I don't know if you guys remember that talk. Most stunning lecture. He drew a car and he drew the bottom of the car on which the whole thing stood, the wheels, the engine, everything stood on the bottom. And he described how the gear and the wheel system worked and how the car moved, but it was based, and that was for spine. how the spine is a weight-bearing, thing. It was just a stunning lecture. I'll never forget that lecture. And so all that you seek is already within you. That's the sapasa of our life. That's the substrate on which we all exist. We forget that substrate and we look outside for answers. So it's a beautiful, I use this sometimes to present, when I've done many of these presentations in churches and in Zen monasteries over the last 30 years, I've done presentations. And I use a story in Sanskrit. This story, I read Sanskrit till pre-university, so I don't know Tamil at all. Tamil எழுத தெரியாது, படிக்க தெரியாது. பேச தெரியும், எனக்கு தமிழ் தெரியும். And I love Telugu and Tamil as the Dravidian languages, but I didn't learn. What that statement goes is, Swakanto Barnastata. And I use a story in Western terms. So the husband and wife have been married 1 year. And the wife looks at the husband in the morning, says, honey, you remember what today is? And the husband says, what is it? What is it? Did I forget something? And she goes, today is our anniversary, damn it. And he looks at her, oh my God, I forgot, Mary. I really forgot. I'm so sorry. And she looks at him and says, what have you got me for my first anniversary? And he says, I've got the greatest gift for you. And he quickly tells himself, he puts his thing, as he gets into the car, he puts a reminder on his iPhone. Hey, marakama vaangirani saingalo, you get the damn gift, and you don't forget to come home without a gift. So he goes to the jewelry store and he asks, beautiful necklace. He looks at the necklace and says, hey, sir, how much is that? That guy says, $6,000, sir. He says, oh my God, that's my life saving for the last year, $6,000. And that guy says, yes, sir, that's the best, the top of the line, the Cadillac, of our line. And so this guy says, okay, here's my credit card. There you go, take it. That's all my savings. That's my debit card, $6,000 wiped out. So he buys that, he takes and gives it to her. And she is teary-eyed and hugs him and says, thank you, thank you. And she says, how much did it cost, Harry? And he says, Mary, you don't want to know. She says, how much? Please tell me. And he says, well, I wiped out our savings, honey, but I'll make that up in 1 year. No problem. Don't worry about it. And she says, oh my God, no. And they go to sleep. Next morning, he gets up and he goes to work. About half an hour into work, he gets a call at work. And his secretary comes up to him and tells him, it's your wife, and she wants to talk to you immediately. So he excuses him from his boss and from the meeting, and he goes up to the telephone and says, what is it, Mary? What is it? I'm in the middle of this meeting. What's going on? And she cries and says, oh my God, Harry, that necklace you gave me, I think I flushed it in the toilet. I was sitting and I think I felt something fall. It's gone. I looked everywhere, honey. I looked in my bed, under the pillow. I looked in the drawer. I've turned the whole house apart. You come right now. You have to come right back. It's a life-saving. So he runs up, gets into the car and goes home and rings the bell. And she opens the door, mascara, streaked face. She's crying, sobbing, heaving. And he looks at her and says, Mary, it's right around your neck. And she says, oh my God, I looked everywhere but around my own neck. Swakanto Barnastata. Swa is self, Kanta is neck, Barnam is jewel, Tata is like that which is around the neck that we search the whole house for in a state of chaos, that which is within us, right within us, we're looking outside. That's the ultimate paradox of irony, that all the mystics are pointed to us. Next slide, Vani. So misunderstanding number 3, as a result of the self-fragmentation, because we have not understood ourselves, we're not understood oneness. Because of this, we think we are on top of the pyramid of life, separate from life. As a result, we have what we call a pandemic. And what is the pandemic? The pandemic is because of man's devastation of the ecosystems. We've destroyed the ecosystems, removed the secondary hosts. The virus was sitting happily in bats and in mongooses and in ferrets and all these animals. Man slaughtered them, destroyed their habitat, destroyed caves, destroyed forests. and the secondary hosts were gone, and the virus now in its quest for immortality, remember, it has no mind. It's just a strand of RNA, and it wants to survive. It's the selfish gene. It wants to survive forever and ever, and it has preceded man by millions of years, so it jumps to man. So we have separated ourselves from nature, separated ourselves from the existence around us, and we've been a destructive force, not a constructive force on this planet. So that is the third misunderstanding that I want to press today. Religion is not about personal salvation. Religion is about salvation of this planet. Religion is about salvation of life itself. It's an altruistic phenomenon. It is not at all egoistic. If you remember Ayn Rand's beautiful Fountainhead, we all read it when we were in our 20s. And in that, Howard Rourke is the egoist who says, what I want, I need to get. And that was a very important philosophy for a long time in the material West. But now we've realized that has culminated in disaster. If we are not a brother's keeper, as Christianity, as Jesus beautifully said, we are not a brother's keeper, then we cannot keep ourselves. We'll destroy ourselves. The next slide. So humanity is in crisis, and crisis is one, individual fragmentation, what a human does to himself. Because we don't understand ourselves, we are mean to ourselves. We're judging ourselves. We attack ourselves, destroy and demean ourselves all the time. And this is a phenomenon that leads to internal fragmentation, leads to anxiety and depression. And we go to all the psychiatrists in our group. Mallika talked about the psychiatrist in our family, and Vani is a psychiatrist by profession. And the psychiatrists will point to self-healing, and they show ways of self-healing. But if we were to understand who we are and have defragment ourselves, then we could solve a lot of problems. Then that leads to societal fragmentation, me and you and me and them, what we do to society, and then ecological fragmentation, like we talked about, to planet, to climate, and other sentient beings. And so we cause extinction of the species. And Chief Seattle, I would encourage you to go and read about Chief Seattle's speech, an enlightened human being who was trying to negotiate with the white man who had come to conquer the Americas. And he says, humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. We're a spoke in the wheel of life. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together, all things connect. And if you look at the deepest of religions, that connectivity, that web of existence is God. There is no God separate from that web of interconnectedness. And we are also a strand in the part of that same God, or the existence of absolute reality. Next slide. So this is just to state that a lot of animals are moving into extinction. 41% of all amphibians, 25% of all mammals are threatened with extinction. So we are doing this to the world around us. Next slide. Yep, we can go to the slide. Thanks, Vani. So yeah, this is just a graph showing after the Industrial Revolution started, the extinction started. So we had cars, we had factories, we had housing, and people started, families started growing in size. And with that started the extinction of all the mammals. And now we are in a huge race to prevent extinction of the elephant, the tiger, the cheetah, but also plankton in the oceans. If the plankton are gone, we are dead meat. If the bees are getting extinct in North America, the bees are extinct, there's no pollination. The pollination fails, the farmers are not having crops. Crops fail, that's going to affect us. We got to understand the simple interconnectedness of what we're doing, not only to ourselves, but to the world around us. Adutha slide, Vani. So the word fragmentation, etymology of fragmentation, from the Latin word fragmentum, a fragment or remnant, the process of breaking or being broken into smaller separate parts, early 15th century, okay? From frangier, literally meaning to break, okay? Brig, to break, okay? And this is related to Brahman, or brih, to grow in the Sanskrit etymology of the ultimate reality. So when we grow in our mind, we fragment in ourselves. And we'll come to that beautiful oxymoron as we go to a few slides. So the antonym of fragmentation is able-bodied, bouncing, fit, hale, healthy, hearty, robust, sound, wellness, well-conditioned, wholesome. All right. So let's go to the other slide. Next slide. Oh, yeah, earlier slide with the graph. Yes. So as a result of this fragmentation, Krishnamurti used to say, because we have dissociated ourselves from nature and stuck ourselves inside little houses, and now, unfortunately, inside little computers and iPhones, what has happened is we created a third cyber universe, unfortunately. So the mystic said you had to go around outside of the world that we see and get into the internal universe. Now the new generations created the cyber universe. So a bigger hop, skip, and jump. First, the cyber universe தாண்டி வரணும், இந்த யூனிவர்ஸுக்கு வரணும், இந்த present moment இந்த யூனிவர்ஸ்ல இருந்து past, present, future and present momentக்கு வரணும், இந்த present momentல இருந்து internalize பண்ணி withinக்கு வரணும், withinல இருந்து transcend பண்ணி we go to the absolute. So our job is so much harder. As a result, we are unhappy as a species. If you look at the happiness curve, we're very happy when you're children. And I'll come to that beautiful statement, and we'll go to basic Christianity again. Malika, I'll be happy with that. We're very happy. And as we go through the years, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth decade, a sense of dissatisfaction, dismay starts, and we're searching for that, for the goal that we feel we can never reach. Time keeps on moving like a river, and we're not able to reach that ultimate sense of satisfaction because our hands reach exceeds what our hands reach doesn't reach what our mind grasps for. Forget that beautiful poetic statement. Kali might know the hands grasp. There's a beautiful statement. What's a heaven for no statement? There's a famous poet who said that. But that disconnect between what we want and what we are, that disconnect leads to a gap in time and space. It's a spiritual gap. And the spiritual gap, Nala, what happens is this constant sense of I'm not there, I'm not there, I'm not there. And that constant dis-ease, see, that's the thing. Absence of ease is dis-ease, right? We get disease. That's why when we hit the 60s and 70s, we get all these issues that come across, whether it's metabolic syndromes or vascular disease and all hypertension and stress-related illnesses. Then as we get older in years, a sense of acceptance starts. Like we become like the grandmother that my mother used to talk about, the party, saying, that state comes, the state that my father was in. He said, he told me after age 70, when I'd go meet him, he said, hey, the Parra, he believed in the Vibhuti, right? He would put the Vibhuti on his, he would put it on my forehead and say, remember, son, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. He said. And he said, every day I'm born after age 70, remember, it's a bonus data. Now, sun is shining, birds are chirping. Thank you, one more day benefit. I've been given a bonus as one more day. That sense of ease comes, as we get into, hopefully we will get to that point very quickly. But my hypothesis that urgency is right now. Why wait till we hit 70 or 80? Let's do it right now as we speak. And the moment of urgency is right now. And we'll go to the next slide. Misunderstanding number 4 is the fundamental misunderstanding. We're just body and mind, bone, skin, and sinew. In the manasi, in the vadambe, we're born sinners, which is not right. I argue with all my Christian friends that there is divinity within us. As your own Jesus said that. And Jesus, when he took on the Pharisees, he basically told them, they called him it blasphemy. And Jesus told them, as now you haven't your own scriptures told you that your God's within you. And so have we taken our consciousness for granted? So very quickly, I went to a Grand Rounds. I was getting out of the car. I was presenting at Grand Rounds, and I saw the stunning scene at 6:45 in the morning. The sun was hidden behind some clouds, and it was a beautiful mystic scene. I quickly took that photograph, and I went up to the podium, and I asked my the person who was doing the slide, I said, insert the slide for me. And I put it at the first slide before my presentation. And I asked the crowd there, about 120 physicians and residents and fellows, I said, how many of you saw this morning? 2 people raised their hands. And the reason is we are so caught up in our mind, body, skull, mind, body mentality. Our world is very narrow. We have a narrow perspective. We're looking through a small peephole at eternity, at infinity. And as a result of this, we forget. So even the sun, what a glorious thing the sun is every morning. And so have we taken our own consciousness? When we look at ourselves, we know we are, right? What is that? We know we are. We know we are. That self-awareness. What an amazing, even the famous neurophysiologist at Harvard would not be able to understand or explain what is that sense of self-awareness. What is self-awareness? So let's go to the next slide. So who are we? So I'm going to go to the very molecular basis of becoming, okay? And this is a professorial lecture. As you would understand, pathogenesis of asthma, pathogenesis of colon carcinogenesis or atherogenesis, and how from a simple plaque and streak, we developed a manifest disease and plaque rupture, for example. Let's go to that. Next slide. So this is who we are, I in the middle, and everything is seen as separate from our sentient life, all other creatures, our neighbor, even our own family. Even I and our child, I and our wife is seen as separate. That fragmentation is the essence of disease. You see, the planet, the universe, gods, heaven, afterlife, all these are seen as separate from us, and we are as observers. And all this is the conditioning born of gender, church, temple, synagogue, scripture, teachers, schools, parents, the way where we were born. If Kalidasan had been born in America in a Christian family, he would have been named Harry. If Mallika had been born in Australia, in a Buddhist family, should have been named Samyak Gupta or something. So color, caste, all these name forms are attachments to us. It's not reality itself. They're added on as artificial attachments to who we really are. Color, caste, and creed are added on. If you ask a little baby, 6-month-old grandchild, what religion are you? Who's Krishna? Who's Buddha? Who's Jesus? He'll just laugh at you and say, ba, 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 ba. He'll just say that. That's a sense of absolute being, pure essence. From then, we get whitewashed or brainwashed into believing narrow paths, and narrow paths starts dogma, and dogma results in conflict and fragmentation. Economic dimensions, occupational hierarchy, ecological hierarchy, and societal hierarchy, power and prestige, all of these complex societal fragmentations happen. I want you to I'm just displaying this as a map. You see asthma, right? That's what I do research in. I've done it for many years. Mast cells, macrophages, T cells, cytokine, adhesion molecules, inflammatory mediators, Th1, Th2 pathway, nuclear factor kappa B. So many things happen with asthma. We see asthma as a disease and give them an inhaled steroid. But what actually happens under that disease is a complex milieu of interactions. And that is what our mind is. Next one. Vani. So we'll start off with, go ahead, Vani, next slide. So I call this eternal presence. Eternal presence is the state of being that's devoid of mind, okay? So if you were to be fast asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, Mallika's fast asleep, or Anu is fast asleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you don't know who you are, what religion do you belong to? Are you male or female? What gender are you? What country are you in? Are you sleeping next to your husband? Are you sleeping on a bed? Are you a believer, non-believer? All of those things will dissolve at 2 a.m. That's a metaphor, deep sleep. Anesthesia. Some of us who have undergone anesthesia for a colonoscopy or quick sedation and reversal, you'll know that you remember the last thing you remember is a nurse coming. And I remember I had a lipoma resected, and the medical student came and he said, Dr. Krish, or Professor, sir, I'm scared. I'm going to give you, I'm nervous, my hands are shaking. I'm going to give you medicine that'll just calm your nerves. And then the chief of anesthesia, he was on call that day. He came over and said, Krish, we're going to give you a happy medicine, my friend. That's all I remember. Next I remember is waking up in the recovery room 2 hours later, and nothing was existent. That is a real self. Ramana says that is your absolute real self, undifferentiated, unfragmented whole. And that is what all the religions were pointing to. Next slide. So that is the baby face. That's why we love the babies. Korandiyum Devamum Gunatal Wundra. Remember that Kannadasan song when we heard as kids? That's why we love our grandchildren. That's why we want a second childhood, because they're pure essence, timeless, creedless, genderless. They don't know what gender or creed they are. Next slide. And from there arises I am, sense of I am. I remember my first I am in kindergarten. I was in Pondi Bazaar in a school called Our Lady's Convent. It was next to Holy Angels Convent in Pondi Bazaar. Kali remembers he lived in Burkett Road. I used to come and meet him at the end of Burkett Road around the Kali Papa. And right across in Powerhouse in Solvanda, Galatlalad, Anga there was this big school. My sisters went to Holy Angels Convent. It was run by the nuns, who were Catholic nuns, beautiful school. Next, I remember this little child school. My sister did not come to pick me up. 4:45, 5, the teachers have all gone. Tanya Okanarikan, that's the first memory I have of I existing as I am. I was probably 3 years old in pre-K. I don't know how many of you remember. I'm sure we don't remember our intrauterine life in the womb. None of us remember that. I can say it as a promise, 100% nischayam, certainty. We don't. We don't remember coming out of the vaginal tract of our mother. We don't remember the slap of the doctor on our back and the first cry we gave as a baby, the first gasp of breath as the amniotic fluid was expelled and we took oxygen into our lungs. We don't remember suckling at our mother's breast. We don't remember our first year birthday when all the people cheered and clapped and cakes were cut and candles were, put out. We don't remember any of that. Probably age 2.5, 3 years, I am, நான் இருக்கேன், I am. அப்படின்னு ஒரு awareness வருது. That I call pure beingness. That is pure essence of, it's uncontaminated, pure, innocent beingness. And that's why in Christianity, I wanted to point this out, when the people ask Jesus, which is the way to heaven, will we find it? And Jesus called a little child, told a mother to give her child up. He seated the child on his lap and he says, I tell you all, you become one with this little child. You all become little children. Then you'll very easily find your way to heaven. That is, we have to deconstruct this complex mind of ours and become simple again, And that's, next slide. From this lie starts the network of thought, as Buddha, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Ramana all pointed out. The 5 senses, they cognize the external world, and the senses see the world through sight, through hearing, through a smell. And the 5 senses create fragmented consciousness. So Buddha beautifully in one lecture says, you have eye consciousness, disciple, you have ear consciousness, you have nose consciousness, you have tongue consciousness and skin consciousness, 5 consciousness. They're integrated by the mind into what we regard to as thought or consciousness of the mind, that then becomes memory and that then becomes knowledge. And out of this, time and space arises. So if we were to go back to the metaphor used to sleep at 9 o'clock, you say bye-bye to the world around you. You say bye-bye to the lamp that's burning next to you. You say bye-bye to your husband next to you. Then you say bye-bye to the bed next to you. Then you say bye-bye to yourself. And when you say bye-bye to yourself, then you say bye-bye to your mind. The minute you say bye-bye to your mind, you've gone into that state of being. That state of being is a state of transcending time and space. Next slide. So from this, when we awake again, this whole process mess starts again. So that's why Patanjali said beautifully, Yogascha chitta vritti nirodha, he said in Sanskrit. Yoga is not contortion of the body and standing on your head. It is the ending of the mess of the mind. Chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta is thinking, vritti is suffering, nirodha is disease. The disease of suffering of mental thinking is yoga. Yoga is yuj, to join, where the baby is joined to the mother through the yoke and the yoke sack. The cow is joined to the cart by the yoke. So yoke, yuj, is to join. So when we join back to the source, the one source, then we end this fragmentation one for all. Out of this fragmentation comes a duality of pain and pleasure, insult and praise, birth and death, fear and loss, inability to accept the present moment, lust, greed, alcohol, drug dependence, depression, suicide. The whole psychopathology of existence arises from this. And next slide. And this is what I call fragmented mind. I hope I've laid it out very quickly, a very complex area, put it out very, very quickly, how quickly in a nanosecond, in a kshanam, this whole process evolves. When you wake up in the morning, boom, 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 one after another starts. And then we look through this screen of fragmented mind. And through that, we look at world, God, society, gender, creed, hierarchies. As a result, go ahead to the next slide. We create the sense of individuality, the illusion of an individual self. That's the essence of all religions, the essence of all spiritual paths. This individual self disappears at 2 a.m., comes back again at 7 a.m., disappears on anesthesia, disappears at death. So they call it illusion, not that it's not real. To you and me, it is real, but it's illusory because it has no permanent existence. It depends on you as the I am, the little baby I am, being there for this whole process to develop. And in 1 second, it all develops. And from there, the next slide. The next slide. The individual then goes around living his mindless existence. He lives a life of unaware consumption, destroys the world around him, the ecological destruction, the whole thing. As a result of which, when ecology goes, when trees go, when plants go, nature goes, it makes us more unhappy as human beings. So we come a full cycle out of this network of mind. Next slide. So we can divide our existences into 2 parts. There's just one part, but the one becomes a second very quickly. The first part is being, or the heart, and the second is becoming a mind. I want to quickly go to etymology of these 2 sources, and then we'll end this presentation. So being a heart comes from hridaya, hrit, heart, Indo-European. It's all Indo-European, right? Kri is to room, kri is room, existence, okay? Daya is give, to give. Daya is compassion, right? Da, to give, donate. That is daya. That's a root word, hridaya. So heart gives. Mind, on the other hand, comes from the root word ma, to become. So the mother, out of matra, comes mother, matriarch. The whole word comes out of ma. Out of ma comes manas, which is mind. Manas comes manushya, which is man, human. See how they're all etymologically related. It's all Indo-European, Indo-Germanic, Indo-European languages. Out of manas comes material. Out of that comes matter. Out of that comes meditation. Out of that comes money. Everything is ma root word. Matter, money, all that comes out of that mind source. So religion as practiced today is the mind going out and trying to find God outside of itself. So that's why people go to churches, they read scriptures, they say things with their mind, whereas the spiritual pathway of all religions, like I told you in earlier slides, whether it's Jesus or whether it was Buddha or whether it was Judaism or whether it was Hinduism, they all said, look within. And look within is being the heart essence itself. So that is the pathway of the yogi. The yogi path is to find oneness within. And so I'll end here, and I'll turn it over to Vani now.
Dr. Guha Krishnaswamy, this was wow to the power of infinite. You know, that's absolutely beautiful, mystic, divine, enlightening. I don't know, I can't find other words. I told our friends that we're going to, that Guha will give us some food for thought, but this is a feast you've given us, an absolute feast. It was delicious. So I'm going to open it out to our friends. Let's engage in a discussion. Who wants to go first with comments, questions?
Ani, can I say something?
Yes, please.
No, thanks, Guha. That was really good. And also, you took us back many years as well. And as you pointed out, you know, we've come a long way since 1976. So that's great. No, I was just going to add a couple of thoughts to what Guha said, and then I'll shut up. The first thing was when Guha touched upon impermanence. And I think that's a very interesting thing, because in the Mahabharata, as many of us know, you know, we have so many brilliant characters, but one of them who realized that the importance of impermanence was Karna, because Karna's greatness was not just that he would give everything, but he would give it immediately, because he was never sure, as Guha said, in that 1/60th of a second, whether he will still be around. And he didn't want to die not having given something that somebody wanted. So one day when he was in his bath, his guards or somebody came to them and said, there's a poor Brahmin who has come to visit and he would like to get some dakshina from you. So he puts his hand out from the bath and says, take my ring and give it to him. So the guard says, there's no hurry, you can come out and do it. He says, no, just give it to him now. We will talk about things later. So that's how much convinced he was about the impermanence of life. I just wanted to say that. And the second thing was, Guha mentioned the lotus and how it comes out of the sort of, you know, really not great soil, but it is beautiful by itself. And also the lotus has an amazing character. It lives in this world, but does not get spoiled by this world. So the water that you see on the lotus, it will just fall off. It leaves no permanent stain on the lotus. And that is how we are supposed to live in this world. Be in the world, but don't let the world affect us. And, you know, like Guha, I came across Ramana through my guru about 35 years ago. And Ramana has had a huge influence on me. And some of you know, I even have a house in Tiruvannamalai, mainly because of that. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm going to shut up here now. Thanks a lot, Guha. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kari. That was thought-provoking too. All right, Mali, go next.
Thank you, Vani. But you said Gana or someone was going to say something. Let them do. I can do it after them. Gana,
okay.
Go on.
Okay, so it's Gana, Jaya, and Mali. Go, Gana.
Guha, thanks for the lovely enlightenment that you have shown us the path. Thank you for that. I just wanted to share on the Vibhuti, Vibhuti Pusra, and Guha's father, he said always after his bath, my father was similar to you, and he always, whenever ஊருக்கு போகும்போது 3 பட்டை அடிச்சு விடுவாங்க. ஏர்போர்ட்டுக்கு போகும்போது ராஜா இது பண்ணாத போட்டுட்டு போ. I just wanted to share something about Vibhuti, you know, what it means, the significance. Vibhuti is called glory, as it gives glory to the one who applies it, and Raksha, which means a source of protection, as it protects the wearer from ill health and evil by purifying him or her. The ash we apply indicates that we should burn false identification with body and become free of the limitations of birth and death. It also reminds us that the body is perishable and shall one day be reduced to the ashes that we apply. As death can come at any moment, this awareness must increase our drive to make the best use of time. This is not to be misconstrued as a morose reminder of death, but as a powerful pointer towards the fact that time and tide wait for none. Ash is what remains when all the wood is burnt away and it does not decay. Similarly, the Lord is the imperishable truth that remains when the entire creation of innumerable names and forms is dissolved. I just wanted to share that bit. You know, my father always used to say, for everything, Vibhuti was his, you know, he was a pediatrician. My sisters used to bring their, you know, my nephews and nieces. He will just apply this is the best medicine I can give you, and he used to tell them. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks, Guha.
Thank you,
Yep.
Ganapati.
Very similar to what my dad used to do. So, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
Ganapati.
Wonderful, Gana.
Okay, Jaya, go next.
Hi, Guha. Long time no see, but you've always been in my thoughts as we've had some discussions about religion and spirituality and stuff like that. I really appreciate your talk. It's so eloquent, and I'm going to share this video recording with all my kids because we always have questions about religion and spirituality. And this is truly what I believe in, what you are talking about. You know, we always have this, I think all of us are on a path, some consciously and some unconsciously. And if we go back to where we started, there's always a time when we felt that, you know, you're by yourself, you're alone, but part of the world, you know. And it starts sometimes gradually, and sometimes after something bad happens to you or little accidents that kind of jerk you to question your existence, who you are, and how you're related to this world. You know, just like you, I have explored every aspect of all religions. And sometimes, you know, you just kind of get sucked into samsara. So although most religions give you tools like meditation or, you know, different stuff, different stages, or you have a guru who comes to you because you're yearning for that, you still slide back. And so it's hard, you know, sometimes when you're living and something bad happens to someone near to you. Yes, compassion, empathy, but here we are asking to be detached. How does that gel, you know? So these are questions that keep coming, and sometimes you find the answers in different people and different situations, just like you have explained a lot this time. So what do you think, Guha? How do you remain detached? It's your, I mean, you've done this, you've talked about it. How do you practice it?
Yeah. So I can, 2 or 3 points. One is the body and mind is going to go through suffering. That's mandatory, right? So when my father passed away, I did weep. When I cremated him, I wept. I've never, as physicians, we were taught, you know, the Hippocratic Oath was to do no harm. And was my beloved father as a corpse. And you know, as physicians, we've taken care of death and dying all the time. And we've seen our own patients die, and we've been the bedside of people dying in hospital. But when it was an electrical crematorium, and so the body was placed on the slab, and then you press the button and the slab moves in, right? And the crematorium then, the blazing inferno of the crematorium will decimate the body to ashes, right? At that point, the pundit told me I'd carry the pot, okay? And the pot had the glowing coals. He said, "Vaitla tirpunga." I was shocked. My heart and my mind froze. This is my father. He's a corpse. But for me at that minute, he was not a corpse. He was still my living father. I had not transitioned, you know, Kubler-Ross's 9 stages of denial and sorrow and acceptance. Those various phases are not even started that phase. I just landed up at 2 o'clock, and 9 o'clock was this. And that was the hardest thing. My hands were trembling as I put it on his abdomen, on his belly. And then they added more camphor. It was a blazing fire on his belly. And that was a choking moment for me, and the finality of it struck. But, you know, what they say beautifully is just like we talked about, and Kali talked about the impermanent situation, is that samsara, stalk, and lotus, right? We are in the world, but we're not of the world, in the sense that if you cut the stalk, right, the lotus will die, right? So samsara and suffering is a substrate, it's a fuel that fuels self-understanding. So that self-understanding, what you have to do, you have to basically go through that process of suffering. But when you're aware of who the sufferer is, quickly you catch back to understanding who the sufferer is. And the sufferer is the mind-body concoction. And then you become the awarer of the sufferer. And instead of being the one suffering, you become aware of the one who suffers. and you realize you're not the sufferer. So Buddha point to two things. Buddha said it beautifully when Ananda, his disciple who took care of him into his 80s, came to him, sat by his foot and said, my mind, I suffer a lot. I go through suffering. How do you overcome this? So Buddha said, he pointed to a fire that was burning where Ananda was cooking some food for lunch. And he says, Ananda, are you that fire? So Ananda says, no. So Buddha says, so it is with your mind. The mind suffers, but you're not the mind. You're the observer. You're the watcher of mind. You're not the mind. So quickly transcend into the watcher. That will help you transcend grief. It's not easy. It's a process. Okay, that's one point I want to make. I want to also point to Ramana that Kali talked about. And anybody who's sucked into Ramana gets sucked in. Kali will tell you that. And in fact, there's a story that when a family was going to visit Ramana for the first time, one of their close friends came and met them and told them, நீங்க எல்லாம் அவர் முன்னாடி உட்காரச்சே எல்லாம் கை பிடிச்சுக்கோங்க. ஏன்னா அந்த எம்டினஸ்க்குள்ள அப்படியே சக் பண்ணின்னு போயிடுவார். யார் உள்ள போவார்னு தெரியாது. Meaning, you'll get sucked into that void, which is absolute egoless void of non-existence. So he's gone from existence to non-existence and transitioning in an existential world as a lotus flower in the samsara. He's got one foot. That's why I love the etymology, the mythology of Nataraja, right? Dancing Nataraja, dancing Shiva. One foot is stamped on the ground and stamps on the little dwarf, which is ego. The other foot is hanging freedom. So that is a sense when you're rooted in samsara, but not affected by samsara, that's when you get freedom. But if you're entangled in samsara without proper understanding, Buddha said, you cannot catch a snake without knowing how to catch a snake. If you catch a snake with your hand, it's going to bite you and you're going to die. You have to know how to catch it from its neck using a forked stick, okay? So that's the second. The third thing I want to say, Jaya, is when Ramana was dying, right? The last week, he had, as you know, he had a soft tissue sarcoma. It had eaten away at his bone, enormous pain. And he was approached by, he had two surgeons. One surgeon said he could do an amputation. Ramana says, he said, and the cancer pasida ina saaptu porudhu, he said. The cancer is also hungry. Why doesn't it eat me? What's your problem? It's eating me. I'm giving myself to that cancer. Don't worry about it. But one of the American authors who was there, he writes the story of how he would hear Ramana scream at night with pain. At 10 o'clock, the screams would begin and non-stop because he took no pain medicine. He didn't want surgery. And towards the end, it was a very painful, bone-eroding, metastatic, locally invasive cancer, as a sarcoma truly is. And he woke up in the morning, Ramana would come up, the same grace, the same essence. None of the night screams and the suffering would show because of his love for the people who needed his compassion. So if Ramana were transcended, also suffered, then you and me are going to go through suffering. So I don't know if it's going to help you, this explanation, but all I can tell you is that if suffering happens, let suffering happen. The T.S. Eliot wrote a poem, I don't remember the exact words. It was one of my favorite poets, but he says, dance, dance, dance like a dancing bear, jump like an ape. He says that. And that's the dance of life, the dance of Shiva Nataraja. Dance of life is participating fully in this existence, but realizing you're not the part. There you are. Me and Kali share similar passions. But that's it. That is, you dance the dance of life. When you cry, you have to cry. The body and mind has to suffer. It suffers. But don't go to prolonged suffering and prolonged agony, because that is ignorance. Once you realize the sufferer is not the one that's suffering, the one who's observing, you can call it Sakshi Bhava. I don't want to use fancy terminology, but go into the witness stage of the sufferer and be not the sufferer, be the lotus that blossoms and not the mud the lotus arises from.
Thank you, Guha. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for raising that question. We got some poignant but very beautiful, answers from Guha. Mali?
వినండి నేను ఇది పెట్టుకుంటాను.
Thank you, Guha. It's very interesting. My experience is that since very young age, I have, of course, my parents are Hindu. Many of my close relatives were Christians. So we used to go and sing all these songs, Christian hymns, pray with them. Of course, I also got to know about through marriage. My sister got married to a Muslim, so there we had to follow certain things and know certain rituals through them. For some reason, because of my experience as a child embracing Christianity and all, there was no conflict for me between the religion. But I felt the religion was built in when the society lost some hope or confused about certain things in their life. It could be just the natural calamity. They didn't know how to work out the meteorological sense or the infections or whatever it is. Amma vanda ammanuku kovam vanduchi. Adhe mari puyal vanda, they will say certain things. And they
పాలే
felt,
లేదే ఇంతదా ఉంది పాలు.
and they felt that
ఉండని
they
because
meditated,
ఇంతదా ఉంది.
when they prayed hard,
Anu mute.
positively, when they meditated and prayed positively, and the satsang, கூட்டமா எல்லாரும் சேர்ந்து பாசிட்டிவா நினைக்கும் பொழுது, there is a significant change. There is a remarkable change. And that they believed in, and that they really helped for them to move on with a hope. And that's how I understood. So even in our own houses, we will have prayers, puja, every Friday puja. And of course, I'm very familiar with Ramana, Ramakrishna, because I was educated in a Ramakrishna mission school, Sarada Vidyalaya. So we used to sing a lot of bhajans and prayers and some Bhagavad Gita verses and things like that. So during puja, most of the time my mother will break down. But all her, whatever conflicts she had, whatever emotions she had through that period, she will break down in front of us, and we will understand at that time, oh, there's something very difficult. And after that, she will calm down. As you said about, say, Ramana, that emotion will outburst, will come, and it will settle in that prayer, in that puja itself. And after that, she'll be happy distributing prasadam and sharing it with everybody. And the first thing will be given to the servant, not for us. The first decoction coffee in the morning will be for the servant. For us only will be the second. So she has taught us how to respect and to see godliness in them, because they serve us and not to. So that is my experience there. And the second one, what I wanted to share was, having been a psychiatrist and worked in mental hospital, I have seen mentally ill patients who have not had this thought about I and me, and who didn't expect others comment about themselves because they don't have insight at all about their selves. I would see them very happy, laughing and smiling, and not, we will say that they are in touch with reality, they are mentally ill. But at that time, I've also heard people also saying that Ramakrishna was hallucinating. He had some delusional belief. Same thing, Ramana was hearing voices, Bharati. And I think all of them, at some point, as you said, they were only or were aware of themselves, and they were reflecting about their own conflicts of themselves, and they were very mindful of that present time. And their faith in whatever they believed in helped them to get so many of the disciples and the followers. And through that, they said so many things. Ramakrishna, Ramana, everybody, and Mahaperiyava also, when you see in Kanchi Mahaperiyava also, they led a very simple life, and the way அவங்களோட ட்ரெஸ் போட்டுக்கிறதா இருக்கட்டும், அவங்க பார்க்கறதா இருக்கட்டும், சாப்பிட்றது கூட, சாப்பாடெல்லாம் கூட, it was very simple, but it was very difficult for us to understand that and also follow that. That detachment, as Kali said, and Jaya was also asking, it's very difficult for us. And the other one, did you say about Kurandiyum Devamum சொன்னீங்களா நீங்க?
There was a beautiful song from Kannadasan, who basically, it's a very profound song. If you actually go and read it and understand the Tamil meaning of the song, it's very, very, very profound. So I just mentioned that as a passing statement, correct?
There is a song, குழந்தையும் தெய்வமும் குணத்தால் ஒன்று, அந்த ஒரு பாட்டோட இருக்கு. அதுல என்னன்னா, so the children, they don't carry baggages. அவங்க நம்மள மாதிரி அடல்ட் ஆன அப்புறம் பேகேஜ் எடுத்துக்கிறது இல்லை. And the fearness of the future அவங்களுக்கு தெரியறது கிடையாது. They are more mindful than the adults. So நீங்க சொல்றீங்க இந்த presence வந்து we also teach or advocate people with mental health problems, depression or anxiety to practice mindfulness, that is to be in the presence. அது நீங்க நிறைய சொன்னீங்க அந்த இதுல. So it was very helpful, and you also reminded us, we hear all these things and sometimes we have knowledge. Having knowledge is different from practicing it, I think. So whatever you said grounded us. The grounding is very important, isn't it? So yes. Whenever we reflect and the introspection பண்றது வந்து, we call it as grounding. The reality, in the presence அப்படின்றது வந்து ரொம்ப முக்கியம். அது அப்பப்போ உங்களை மாதிரி ஆட்கள் ஞாபகப்படுத்தும் பொழுது அந்த மனித தன்மை நமக்கு வந்து வரும்னு நான் நினைக்கிறேன். ரொம்ப நன்றி. தேங்க்யூ.
For sure. No, you raise a good point, and religion has a role to play for sure. But like I say, religion is a pointing finger, and then once you realize it's only a pointing finger, but it's not the heaven beyond where it is pointing to, then there is no need to convert, no need to move from one religion. You're jumping from the frying pan into fire. In my humble opinion, all religions are saying the same thing. So I feel that's why we are so fragmented and divided as a species. If every religion were to look back, and not as one individual person looking back, but if every religion were to look back as a group, as a massive group, every religion would look back, they'll all realize that they're all coming from the same source. That's why I like Shirdi Sai Baba. I watched the series many years ago, and he says, Sabko Malik Ek Hai, he said, the origin for all, the master for all is just one master, from which we all come. We just use different names. You might say Jesus, one might say Buddha, one might say Allah, one might say Krishna. Isa, Krishna, Isha, all these are Indo-European terms which have been used. Basically, they're all saying the same thing. Only the mythology is different, because when these truths were presented to people, they had to be presented in an understandable format. So Jesus spoke in parables, but people do not understand parables. They took the parables as absolute statement of fact. But it was parables, meaning, why not just say, this is a boat? Why speak in parables? He spoke in parables because he was trying to teach a deeper meaning. He was using metaphors to point. When he says, you throw seeds on a bad field and a good field, or a good Samaritan, or the prodigal son story. He was teaching them using metaphorical terms, but people took it as absolute reality in all the religions. And same thing with Hinduism, Buddhism. Look at the caste system in Hinduism that basically preached oneness. Samadrishti was a term that I've heard growing up. Samadrishti, what a beautiful term. Sama is same, drishti is one vision. From Samadrishti, we got caste system. And from caste system came more fragmentation in society, okay? So everything means that we have to go back. We're not becoming, we're going backward towards being, in the sense of, we go back truly to a sense of being, the essence. We go back like Jesus called it, I give you the fountain of eternal life, right? The fountain of eternal life is being. From that being, everything springs up, and into the being, everything dissolves. At 2 a.m., the metaphor I use, where do you go? Where does Ganapati go, and where does Rekha go, and where does Preeti go, and where do you go? We all go to the same place. Does it have a name, geography? Does it have a map where you enter when you go to sleep? Nothing. We dissolve all mental boundaries. When mental boundaries dissolve, there is no more religion. There is no more distinction. That is the absolute reality we enter in, metaphorically as sleep. But that's what I mean in reality, that we should enter. This is that state of absolute oneness. When we realize every religion has its problems, the interpreters of religion created issues, in Christianity, there were problems, right from crusades on, burning witches. If you look at Hinduism, there are problems, caste system. Every religion you look at it has some issues because of the interpretation problem. But if you look at the source of the problem, the source is the same, and the source is beyond any problems, beyond any fragmentation. That's what I want to point out.
Unfortunately, I don't know whether you'll agree, the religious leader symbolizes God as someone who would give things, or who would do things what we pray for or we're asking for. And if that doesn't happen or something, they'll say, oh, why don't you try this one? Why don't you try that one? And also the rituals they made, you have to pay so much, or you have to do so many, you have to. So I don't know whether it was to exploit people, or it was for some intention. But I think it is important for us to help them understand that God is not there just to do things what you're asking for. But people will say, where is God? I don't believe in God because he killed my father of COVID, or he'll kill my mother of COVID. So it is important for us to understand what is religion and what is God, and how we comfortably accept that without any conflict and go with that.
So it raises a very deep point. I'll put it briefly and we can discuss this later, okay? So our idea of God is a humanized God, right? So the question is whether God made man in his image or man made God in his image. I don't know which one it is, So God, the gods that we worship on this planet have the same duality as man does. They have anger, they punish to send you to eternal purgatory, all this stuff, reincarnate you, okay? Fear phenomenon, religion, okay? And probably in reality, when you look at the paradigm I showed you, that absolute presence, the source of all, transcends duality, right? It is the oneness, right? In Christianity, the scripture where Jesus tells, I am one with my Father is one with me, and I am one with you, and you are one with the Father. I mean, he tells the people, he tells the disciples. What does that mean? That means he's pointing towards that oneness. And in that state of oneness, it's non-dual. In the non-dual state of being, there's neither good nor evil. It's going to be very difficult for people to break through that paradigm, because good and evil has been the basic paradigm of all religions, right? So God will benefit the good and will punish the evil. So evil people. So, but God transcends good and evil. And even more profound, in the Upanishads, it says, when words are cast at God, words recall right back. They don't enter. God is beyond language also. So God is beyond language. God is beyond duality. Probably Kali can comment on it since he's read, he's immersed in Ramana. But the actual transcendental, that's why it's called transcendental source. When you sleep at 2 a.m., you're transcending body and mind construct into a state of being that you're not aware yourself that you're in that state of being, but you're an absolute being. You're not dead. You wake up in the morning at 8 o'clock, you're not dead. You are very much alive, but you lost those boundaries that restrict you, that society and religion imposed on you. So what I'm talking about is same religion, but it is a religion-less religion. It is an undogmatic religion, a religion without boundaries. It is a religion where the mind has no place. It has no role in that state of being. And so Rumi has a beautiful statement. He says, I took the stick and I smote the thought. And I said, thought, you have no role in this altar of God where only silence reigns. Rumi says that. in that state of being of silence, even language is transcended, right? So it is not something that's esoteric somewhere behind a cloud somewhere. God is sitting in Kailasham or in some place in heaven. Heaven is right now here, and we can understand that by just transcending mind. Meaning, many of us cannot transcend mind. It's going to be a hard one. But the paradigm shift has to begin now. We have to be stream enterers, not sitting on the bank and looking at the stream as outsiders. We have to be in the water. We have to be in the experience. We have to be part of the stream, the flowing, gushing river, in the hope that given enough, when we lose our grasp, you grasp when the water's pulling us, we lose our moorings. We're holding on to straws, metaphorical straws. We're holding on to twigs and branches as the stream is pulling us. At some point, when we give up those streams, attachments, we give up those things, the stream will take us to the source, and that is enlightenment, right? And then you'll find there's no Mallika anymore, there's no Kali anymore, there's no Ganapati anymore. All of us land up at that one source that has neither name nor form. It's a nameless form, beginning and ending. The name form mind இருக்கிறதுனால தான் இவ்வளவு ப்ராப்ளம் வருது.
Yes.
All very beautiful. More points
Thank
to
you,
ponder. We have 2 more people, and then we'll stop because we are nearing 2 hours of presentation and discussion. So Preeti and then Kannan.
I told Vani, I'm going to say only 2 words, but they're going to be my first 2 words. One is WOW, wow, in capital and bold letters for Guha. Second word is thank you. Thank you, Guha. And as you spoke, just took me back to college days, the same voice, the same thing. It was wonderful. And I'm glad you remember Baby Raj's Preeti.
Yes.
So easily.
No, we talked and we met also.
Yes, I know.
Somebody's wedding, you meet one number. Yeah.
Yes. And the reason I'm saying thank you is my mother, there are some relatives of mine who keep telling religion is different, spirituality is different. But I am still, I think, caught up in the thing of profession, family, everything. I keep asking them, what does it mean? How do you, religion and spirituality, how is it different? Show me this, tell me that. And I have never been convinced that I have to do something about it. I have to look into it. Like you said, the mindfulness or whatever. Like Kali said, knowledge is different, but knowledge is easy, but wisdom is different. And to get that enlightenment, now for me, it is like an awakening, an insightful presentation. And definitely, I understood so many things today. So for that, a very big thank you to you. Thank you very much, Guha.
Thank you, Preeti. Thank you.
Thanks, Preeti. Kannan?
Yeah, first time I'm just joining your meet. And, me and Guha, have been, even though miles apart, we are always very close. We make a point to get across to each other. And now I had a chance to listen to Guha's philosophical outlook. Yeah, I had made a lot of notes. And, but what I remember, I attended Jiddu Krishnamurthy's lecture once. I attended a week. Then finally, what I remembered at the end of the week was think nothing. He was talking about the Sunya, concentrate on nothing, think nothing. But, this is a big word from a man who has achieved it. See, we are all gone through, so many, years, and still I feel that we don't have the wisdom yet. We are still learning. So what I would appeal is, this life is always chaos. And what we find, if you think there is some rhythmicity, it is just a microcosm. Even the universe, the Big Bang, it all started with the chaos. But what you think, you see 24 hours, it's a day, 7 days a week, year. But again, there is some sort of rhythmicity which we don't understand. So what we are trying to talk about, this Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, it's all, beyond our scope to discuss and then, understand. And then what, again, I don't want people to be religious. I tell people be spiritualistic first. Religion, it's like what Guha told, it's a raft. Yes, you remember about the raft, but it is a stepping stone. It is to open your eyes, vision, to understand things and then make your mind properly. It is very difficult to grasp all these finer aspects easily. I tell my patients, my juniors, you stick to some philosophy, keep reading, even if it is going to be Bible or even your whatever Quran. I've read some parts of it, then finally feel they all come from a common source, like what Guha told, compassion, empathy, that way. So many things are common, and we used to joke that Jesus Christ spent quite a few years in his teenage in Kashmir. Some, books on that. I'm not going to the authentic. It was the center of the Saraswati Mahal, where the knowledge, the wisdom of all the religions originated there. And then if I look at Ramanujacharya's Sri Bhashyam, or whatever it is, all the tenets are same. What they say, God loves somebody who is good, who is compassionate, respects others, helps others, doesn't talk ill of others, doesn't hurt others. That way. He just, tries to make every individual good society. But what happens, we are always told, think of him all the time. Unfortunately, we always forget him most of the time. That is why, you have all this reminding you, yes, he is there, he is looking at you, he is watching every move. And then you have to make him, you have to make him feel good about you. And then, try to remember every action, is his action. It is not, it is a karma derived. Whatever you do, whatever you think, it is what his directions are there. But anyway, he doesn't, script everything. He gives you the hardware, he gives you the software, and then he wants you to train and then be good. That is the essence of things. And then I always, depend on one book. I read Bhagavad Gita. The answer to all the problems are there. I appeal to Preeti. Please get a very small book on Bhagavad Gita. It is available at all Ramakrishna Mission, bookstores. There's no author. All authors are good. So they are very simple, very understanding. So you don't need a counselor. You don't need somebody to guide you. Have some time, half an hour to yourself, read them, and then understand, what is going around you. It is like this, he was just telling about transcending. I would say it is not, you don't need to transcend far. Just detach yourself a bit from within you to outside. That is enough. Then, look at you, do some introspection. Where you're all, we're all fortunate, to be a bit, better than others. We have the time, we have all our needs met, and then we have time to, think sane most of the time. Unlike others, people are just running around. People, have to meet their ends met every day. So we are fortunate enough. And then, meanwhile, apart from, trying to do your medical service, try to do some service, philosophy, try to make people sane and then understand. So, it's like this. So the life evolves, you learn so many things. And then at every stage of life, you learn things in a different way. You understand in a different way. And this question of detachment is very difficult. Gita says again, do just your karma. And then, finally appeal to me. That is it. So do your things properly, what is expected of you. Everybody has a specific role in life. And then if you think of samsara, yes, you have a role, you have to attend to your parents, you have to attend to your kith and kin, children. So you are in place in a position where you can take care of so many people. See, today, with this COVID, all my relatives are getting COVID. Only thing I joked and thanked them, you are not coming in a bunch. You are coming in, families, 4, 5 at a time. I'm able to manage. So that way. So my wife is telling you, take care of yourself. You may get a reinfection. But I say, no, I've been endowed with this. And then I have some immunity. God has given me the courage to do certain things. I'll do my duty. So I hope he'll also, take care of me like the way he did in the last time. So don't worry. So it's like this carry on Preeti. Don't, think that I am in this, but give small part of your day. Read a good scripture, one scripture. Don't get confused. There's so many things like, reading a textbook, finally anatomy, what we did, we read the Cunningham 12th edition. We didn't read anything else, no Gray's Anatomy. Guha would have read, but I didn't read. So it is like this, you keep trying, definitely, there is a lot of solace. And then there are a lot of good lectures, people, well-meaning lectures. In fact, our scriptures are full of, knowledge. There may be stories, but you have to understand the essence of it. Again, there are a lot of explanation given. In fact, they were all talking about Karna. Karna, in his own sense, he exemplified certain things, but you can't say he was a great soul, because you have a dharma which you have to follow. The dharma is to, when somebody seeks help, you have to give the help. And his main fault was not helping Draupadi when she was asking in that Sabha for help. Not any one of you have the, moisture in your heart, and how ladies being insulted.
And thank you for
and
joining.
Even at that time, he didn't help. Hailed as a big hero that is made out by the media or the theatrics, but not. Everybody had their drawbacks. So you go read. You have to read the Uddhav Gita and then read what happened. So all the scriptures are, for you. They're all given previous examples. Learn from them. There's a lot of time, but devote at least, some time every day, listen. And of course, like what Mallika told, group therapy, like, good bhajans, nama sankirtanam, definitely, relieves you of all your burden, and then you feel light. And definitely, you'll have a satsang, which will also have a sort of, I would say, healing. So with that, I congratulate Guha. I have made a lot of notes. Some things I had too much time, the over limit is gone. Thanks, Vani, for arranging all this, and then individually reminding me about the meet. Every time she'll have a separate private message text to me saying the link is here, join Guha speaking. So I jumped. Still, I am in my clinic, no problem. I had a wonderful, enjoyed the talk.
Thank you, Manan. Thanks for joining, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. And again,
bye.
Beautiful.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, all good things come to an end, and so will this. Guha, your talk was absolutely enlightening, educational, and we really look forward to part 2. Thank you all for joining. Be well, stay safe, and enjoy the weekend.
Thank you, Guha. Thank you, Vani.
Thank you, Guha. Thank you, Vani.
Thank you, Vani.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Vani.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Vani. Bye, Vani.
Bye, bye, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Preeti.
Bye all. Bye all.
Bye,
Stay
bye,
safe.
Rani. Nice seeing you.
Stay safe.